Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's short course. We're going to talk about incident response, why and when it fails. I think this is a really important, uh, just sort of discussion to have. When we think about everything that's taking place today, whether it be security officers or police officers, when they're engaging with the public, there are certain things that we can do to sort of really just make things flow better. Also, there are certain things that may even help de-escalate a situation. When we think about incident responses, we want to think about us as well. But keep in mind as we go through this short course that this does require that the public cooperate in certain ways as well. We're all aware that it's a two-part system, the mutual respect, the communication. So we're going to talk about some different things, but this course is meant to help and just sort of give you some ideas for thought, as well as the purpose of this course. Like this is just a 30-minute introductory course to kind of trigger your mind, get you thinking, maybe give you some tips or some insights to how you can improve your employment performance or my talking, but how you can improve your performance so that you can do better when you're out there in the field. So before I'm unable to talk anymore, why don't we just go ahead and jump right into it? Like I said, this is only going to be about 30 minutes. Our courses, our short courses like this, they're introductory courses. They run 30 minutes. They don't go over that. And it's just to highlight some key points. Okay. With all that being said, so our talking points today, we're going to talk about the reactive and proactive approach to officers working in the field. We're going to talk about communications, officer actions, and we're going to talk about response failure, why and when, and ultimately, what kind of contributes to it. But my name is Reginald Maddox, and this is being brought to you by Action to Service. So we want to talk about incident response to help you really understand that this is the key point, guys. This is where it starts from. What happens when you get that call and you're responding to assist someone, how it plays a part in how that whole scenario plays out. Granted, we all understand that there are certain things that we simply cannot control. No matter how much we want to, no matter, how much we want to control the situation, we simply can't always control the narrative. So we want to talk about that. And hopefully, if you get something from this, please let us know. I'm going to have the contact information at the end of the presentation. Feel free to reach out for us if you'd like a copy of this presentation. Like I said, reach out, simply send us an email. We'll be happy to share it with you. And this will also be posted on our YouTube channel, Action to Service. If you want to go back, you look at some of our other webinar presentations that we have put together. It's late, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So first, we're going to talk about incident response. In situations where help is needed, and basically an individual agency can step in to assess the situation, provide assistance as needed, and this plays a crucial role in safety and security. So when we talk about incident response, does your position, your job require you to be a primary responder when someone calls for assistance? Are you the one that has to respond to the scene? Now, there are some jobs to where you got positions like maybe engineers, you may have people that's in housekeeping, people that are concierge who may have information reported to you. You may only report to certain things. For example, people who work in maintenance or engineers or facilities may only respond to situations involving mechanical, physical property repair, leaks, gas leaks, stuff like that. But when you're talking about a security person, a law enforcement officer, you're talking about somebody that's responding to things that's a little more human related, where you're really engaging with the public. You're trying to settle conflicts. There could be civil disputes. So incident response is going to require you to respond to assess situation based on the information you have received. And the key thing about incident response is as we sort of talked about in one of our previous videos, the information you initially get involving it surrounding an incident can change once you get on the scene. Oftentimes, we'll find that the description of the person is not exactly the shirt and color and pants have been mixed up. The incident was not even relayed. What actually took place is not actually what happened. It was a misunderstanding. There were miscommunications. So there are different things that plays a part when it comes to incident response. But in summary, that is pretty much our sort of explanation of what an incident is. When an agency or individual is required to step in and assist in a situation, provide assistance. And like I said, it does play a crucial role in safety and security for those involved, but also the perception that people will have of that agency or that group that is identified as personnel that are required to respond to incidents. So it does play a role. People are looking at how fast did you get there? What was your attitude? What was your approach? What actions did you take? Were you actually communicating? Were you listening? All of this plays a part into the incident response because ultimately there's an objective that needs to be accomplished. So when we talk about incident response, there's some things that we need to kind of be mindful of, and that's the reactive officer versus the proactive officer. I've always found myself that the proactive officer has more intelligence in regards to they're more keen and knowledgeable about what's taking place within their surroundings, within their community, within the areas that they're working. Whereas the reactive officer is simply just waiting. Like they're pretty much just cruising about, they're pretty much just walking about, but they're not really attentive or aware of what's taking place in their surrounding areas. This can create mistrust. It really can create mistrust when people feel that this officer is only engaging when something happens because they feel like, well, the officer should have seen this, they should have observed this, they should have noticed this. They may have seen that officer pass by 3 times and those same group of kids were standing by that car, for about 30 minutes. Each time he passed by, those kids were still there. Eventually, when the window's broken, people reported the officer never stopped, never just made his presence known. Sometimes in situations to where if you got a proactive officer and he sees a group of people sort of in an area and don't want to approach them because there's really no reason to approach them right now, but they have a legitimate reason to believe that their behavior is suspicious. What if that officer just parked his car to where he's visible, they can see him, he can see them? Now they decide, you know what, let's just walk off. Let's just leave. You could have just prevented a crime versus the reactive officer who is maybe engaged in his cell phone or maybe looking just to go find somebody to talk to about what's on the news or what a sports game, who's not really attentive or paying attention to what's going on. That car window's broken. People saying, well, did you not see those kids standing there? They was looking at cars. Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you make yourself known? Why were you not visibly present so they knew to leave the area? That is the difference between the proactive and the reactive officer. The proactive officer are proactively and with purpose seeking to deter crime, and they really are trying to gather that intelligence about the community. What are the normal activities? Who are the normal people that transit this area? Versus the reactive person who really doesn't pay attention to all that. They're more so just going with the flow. They're sort of in their own world until they have to step out of their world and engage with other people. And this sort of just leads to a very, very bad perception that people have about that security officer, that law enforcement officer, because they feel that that reactive officer is not engaging. Also, they're not engaging with the community just to build those relationships to where when it comes time to talk to people or get information, they're more willing to share and engage with that officer. Reactive officers don't want to do that. And that plays a very crucial role in the community. So being proactive is something that can help you with incident response because the proactive officer is more likely to get community participation versus the reactive officer who only comes around or engage with people when things are going wrong or when they have to enforce things. So now you do have a negative perception about you. And people often would not feel safe around a reactive officer who pretty much stays hidden away or nonchalant about what they're doing versus that proactive officer who they see walking around, who they see driving around, who they see going through buildings, who they see actually engaging with people, actually making contact with people just to establish, let me just let this person know that I see them. Simply saying, hey, how are you? Everything's good? Just to get a vibe from that person. Do they belong here? Do they not belong here? Let them know that we are here. So if you are working in the security, like I said, our stuff is primarily for, security officers, public safety officers, unsworn officers, but it can be utilized by both sides, law enforcement and uh, our security personnel as well. Essentially, they're doing the same job. The real difference is the authority and the amount of property that they have to cover or land, so to say, they have to cover. So ask yourself, are you a reactive officer or are you a proactive officer? Now, a reactive officer doesn't mean that this person is bad. It simply means that this person doesn't see a need to really be active or engaged until something happens. That's when they click in. It doesn't mean they won't be able to perform their duties well. It just means that they're not trying to gain the necessary information and knowledge to prevent something from happening. So now let's get into communication because this is something that I think a lot of officers on both sides struggle with. Because when we talk about communication, communication with the subject and suspect, oftentimes I see officers on both sides, security and law enforcement, who get into this thing when someone says, what's your name and badge number? They don't want to give it. Well, read my shirt. Give it to them. What's the point of arguing about it? Why waste 10 to 15 minutes of your time instead of progressing the conversation to come to some type of amicable solution? You insist upon going back and forth about a name and giving them your badge number. Keep your communication respectful. Keep it respectful. We all know that some of these people that we encounter in the general public are going to be belligerent, they're going to be disrespectful, they're going to be insulting. The entire purpose of that is to get under your skin, to get you to come out of your professional character into a disrespectful tone. They want you to get derogatory, they want you to be rude, they want you to put your hands on them. They want you to break every policy and rule that your agency has set up for you. So now they can get it on camera and use it for you. So just practice to control your emotions and don't allow your communication to get out of hand. Okay, because in incident response, you have to be mindful too that if you come on the scene, are you over animated in your body language? Are you hyper? Is your adrenaline fully pumping to where you're actually creating a concern because people see you all jacked up, all hyped up. So now they're feeling that same energy coming from you. You have to be mindful of that. Are you yelling? Are you screaming out commands when it's not necessary? You have to be mindful of that when you're communicating with a subject or suspect or even bystanders in the area. The other thing is communication with officers. Oftentimes, when we get calls coming in for assistance, especially in the security area, your general security officers. One thing that often happens is emotions come into play as to whether or not you like this next shift. Do you like this next officer that's in? Sometimes people will withhold information, but you're not punishing your coworker. You're punishing the caller. You're punishing the person who actually called for assistance by not relaying that information. Because you have to consider the fact that it is really important that even if somebody tells you something that maybe happened 10 minutes ago, and you say, well, there's nothing can be done now. The fact is that situation was reported. That means that it is a real concern from the individual or individuals who made that report that this happened. So it needs to be documented and it needs to be shared with the other officers working with you. It needs to be shared because the worst thing that can happen is for someone to communicate a concern to you. You don't share it, you don't pass down that something happened, you don't relay this information. All of a sudden, when the next group of officers come in, they're unaware. But yet, when other members of the community or members of the organization ask, hey, did you hear about this? Are you guys working on this? Are you guys doing anything to try to prevent this from happening again? And that officer's standing there and just kind of like, oh, um, so tell me what happened. So this happened today? That creates a sense of distrust. It looks unprofessional and it makes the community, the people who are in the organization feel like your security organization, your law enforcement organization is unprofessional, lacks the knowledge of what's taking place within the organization or the community. You're useless. It's basically how they're seeing it. Like they don't know anything. How do you not know when it simply just requires an exchange of information, sharing the information to ensure that everyone within the team is aware of what's taking place. So when that person comes up, hey, yes, we are well aware of this. We understand that a suspicious person came in, attempted to enter two doors. So we are going to increase patrols. We have a photo of the individual, and they should have told you. But if that individual was seen, please let us know. That makes a big difference. It gives comfort and it makes the public or the people within the organization feel secure because now they don't feel like only this one person has this key information that I'm concerned about, but their whole security or law enforcement team has the information. Now I feel better. I feel like everybody's aware. They're not even really concerned about the action or steps that's taking place. Right now, they're concerned about what is actually going to happen going forward. And when it comes to communication, follow up. This is something that I love to do. That whenever my people are engaged in something, I always make sure to follow up. I always send an email. I always communicate somehow, either face to face or electronically, just to let them know, like, hey, we received this report. Thank you for sharing. Here's our next step. Here's our actions. Hey, here's an update. This is what we're doing. And a little side note is whenever you respond to an incident and you're that first person, you're taking the information, give a card, give an incident number, give a case number. Always, always, always. But follow up is so important because one of the worst feelings is for someone to feel like their situation is traumatic to them. It may be people who feel like they're a little fearful about what's going on, people who are a little concerned about what's taking place. Will it happen again? This car was just broken into. Is my car going to be next? This strange person walked in the building. This young person was actually cornered by these group of people and just concerned. So doing a follow up to let them know that Everyone is aware. You're actively investigating. Here's your next steps. This helps to bring comfort, and it helps that when you have responded to an incident, this is part of the process for incident response. All of this is part of the process. But oftentimes, people will respond to an incident, gather the information, type something up, and okay, we'll see what happens next. So these are the things that need to play a role. In our more in-depth course, we talk about strategies, like what strategies are you putting in place? What are you doing to ensure that this doesn't take place again? So these are key things that need to be considered when we are talking about um, incident response. Officer actions. Now, when we have officers that are responding to the scene, you've got a call, you're responding to an incident. Listen and take notes carefully. I cannot say that enough. It is so important. One of the things that I see from a lot of officers is they don't want to pull out a pen and pad. They don't want to be seen writing anything down. Some people are just incapable of multitasking. I've seen officers ask a person name, they don't write it down. How do you spell your name? Do that the first time. Am I pronouncing it correctly? But don't get 5 minutes into the conversation. Can I get your name again? I'm sorry. Can I get your last name again? Listen and take notes carefully. Because the worst thing is for someone who's been through something traumatic. And because the officer is not really fully focused, he's asking repetitive questions, not from a strategic standpoint, but simply because the officer simply doesn't remember or can't really articulate very well what the person just said, so they can go back and put it in the report. So they're asking the same questions in a repeated manner. And you can see when the individual is getting frustrated. Like, okay, you just asked me my name, you asking again. I told you 3 times. It was a Prada bag. It cost $2,000. I bought it from here. It's just you make the subject or suspect become so frustrated that they eventually either just want to shut down or don't want to talk to you because they feel like you're not paying attention. You're not being attentive to them. So keep in mind, I'm not saying you can't ask repeated questions, but you need to understand how to do that in a strategic manner. Okay, there's a tactical approach to that, to where you're trying to establish something, and that is a big difference versus you simply not being fully focused, not writing anything down, and making them repeat themselves and tell a traumatic event over and over and over because you can't get the facts right because you're not properly taking notes or listening to them. Next is, when you're responding, when you get on, you respond to an incident, think about your objective. How do you get the best results? When you know that you are responding to an incident, you gather the facts, the entire time you need to be thinking, what is my objective? Are we going to criminally trespass this person? Is this person going to be arrested? What is my objective? Is it simply to send this person to their department, send this person to their department, and let the managers or the directors deal with it? If you work at a university, is it to send this person to class, send this person home? What is your objective? Because you're trying to de-escalate the situation, but you're also looking to present the situation to the next step for a solution to resolve it. So what is your objective to do that? So you need to be thinking through that process. And how are you going to communicate the next steps? How do you let this person know that you understand what happened? Here is what you can expect coming forward from us or from the department, or if in the case they are being arrested and they're being taken to jail. So you need to be able to articulate these things. But first, before you can even articulate anything to someone else, you must have a clear and concise understanding of your level of authority, as well as does your objective meet and fall within your level of authorities. so that you can complete it to get the best results. Don't rush the investigation when you're responding to an incident. If you're responding to an incident, trust me, I do understand. I've been in situations to where I literally put my food in the microwave, and as soon as I took it out, I sat down, got my fork and spoon, and cooled off enough to eat. Boom, I had a call. Come back, boom, I had a call. Sometimes it's like, oh, you've been on patrol all day, you got to go to the bathroom. As soon as you get that chance to go to the bathroom, boom, you got a call. It is like a never fail thing. I'm sure some of you can really relate to that. But when you're in a situation to where you're feeling like there's something you need to do, and I'm gonna use the bathroom as a great example, because when you've been, let's, not to discuss anybody, but when you are really needing to go to the restroom and your body is letting you know, because you can feel it in your body, you can feel your body starting to build up pressure. It can make you start to rush a situation. It can make you start to rush an investigation. So think about how you handle things like that. Think about, can you pass this off to a partner? Okay. How do you deal with a situation like that? So you have to consider these things and keep these things in mind. Sometimes when you're dealing with a situation to where you could be arguing with a partner and you got this call, you got to go, your partner hangs up, that's on your mind right now. And you're rushing to this call to deal with this conflict, but still in the back of your mind is, I want to call him or her back because I want to finish this. I want to address this. So these are things that you have to think about. Also control your emotions. And I mentioned that earlier, that sometimes people would try to get under your skin. So it's really important that you do control your emotions. Don't fall into the trap that at the slightest insult or question of your authority, all of a sudden you're off the hinge now. You're that officer that's out of control, and it doesn't look good. Keep in mind, they are recording. They're recording, and they can't wait to show that you acted in a way that escalated the situation. Response failure. We have to think about situations that, as officers, when we are called out to a scene, you know, when we fail to do some of the things that we should do, it does have a negative effect. And sometimes it can be short term if we address it and try to make the necessary corrections, but it can have a long term effect, and it can really affect the perception of officers overall. So we all know that when we have a failure, it creates a lack of trust with the public. And a failure could be something as simple as we mentioned earlier, when there is a situation and it's not communicated, or officers taking extended amount of time to respond to situations. Officers reporting to the scene, we're responding to the scene with a rush attitude, like, okay, I just want to get this over with, blah, 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 blah. Officers being short, being rude, uh, officers just having like an over authoritative attitude and tone with the person because they're trying to shut them down, say what they want to say, give them a piece of paper and leave. So these are the things that contribute to an officer's failure, because the person who called for assistance is now feeling like they're a criminal. They're now feeling like, okay, well, I'm the victim in this, but why am I being treated like a criminal? Or, I just want to understand. I just had a robbery, but no one seems to care. I understand it wasn't your money, it wasn't your house, but you know, I took a loss here. So why am I feeling like crap about it? Also, when officers don't respond properly and we experience a failure in our response to incidents, it encourages people to take matters to their own hands, because ultimately they come to the conclusion that this is not, calling them is not going to do anything. I will handle it myself. Sometimes it'll be petty retaliation, and that can go all the way up to violent acts. Uh, so you have to think about that. Like, some people will get so fed up when life throws so much at them, and then they have a negative experience with an officer responding to their call for assistance, that could be just what pushes them over the edge to where they feel like I'm now taking things into my own hands. I'm going to damage this person's property. I'm going to go and fight this person, or I'm going to do something to get vengeance and to get justice myself because I can't depend on officers to do it. Also, it can create conflict among officers. When incident response fails and you have officers who are not performing their job the way they should, they're not following protocols or procedures, they're not documenting, they're not doing the things they're supposed to do in accordance to policy. It affects those officers who are doing their job. Those officers who are trying to ensure that public safety is actually being done. You know, Officers who take pride in their work, officers who really want to see that what they do matters, and they want the public to realize that, listen, when you call us, we're going to do our best to assist you within our authority. And we want you to realize that we are doing this as a way to show you that we actually care. But when people run into those officers who don't care, their incident responses are late, they're uncaring, like I say, they are hostile in their tone or attitude. It creates conflict because now you have the officers who really do just want to do the best job they can do and really serve the community, having to deal with the backlash from those officers who don't really care about the community, just collecting a paycheck or just working with their company because they want to check, and they're not trying to ensure that the organization or the community is actually safe. So these are the things that we have to think about. And that's how it can create conflict, because you can have one shift asking another shift, well, why aren't you guys doing this? Why aren't you guys actually communicating? Why aren't you guys following up with this person? Why didn't you guys respond to this call? Why didn't you guys go and check to make sure that this was an actual robbery or an actual theft? Why was that person sitting there waiting for an hour and no one showed up? Things like this can really create conflict among officers. And that's something that we have to consider and think about when responses fail when it comes to incident response. Like I said, guys, these only go about 30 minutes. Thank you for watching. Here's our information. You want to reach out to us. You got any questions? You would like a copy of this presentation? If you would like something you would like us to speak about, feel free to also visit our website, actiontoservice.com. If you would like to learn more and hear more, if your organization would like to have us conduct trainings or come and speak, please let us know. But in regards to incident response, please keep in mind that people do create a perception based on the response that they receive. How you engage with that person, how you actually work and actually set everything up determines a lot about that next officer that they encounter, or the departments or agencies overall. Even companies can be affected by the fact that if the incident response is not appropriate, not handled well, and the consumer, the customer, the employee, the community sees it as a failure, it applies to that whole agency. It applies to that whole agency or department. So it's really important that you think about these things and just kind of take your time, work through them, and always, you guys, remember to be safe and stay safe. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed this webinar. Please feel free to check out our website for other webinars that have been posted. And once again, thank you so much. And this concludes today's webinar.